Hey there, everybody. Jim over here at Justifiably Proud Productions. How you brewing? It's good to see everybody. It's Sunday, October 22nd, 2023, and I'm glad to be here with everybody today. Wanted to take a moment to talk about celebrating successes. And I know that I've been putting a lot of different items out there on the social media and on the YouTube channel, and I just wanted to kind of come back and reiterate some stuff. And I think a lot of times, no matter what profession you're in, there may be some challenges with celebrating successes. And so it dawned on me. I'm thinking about what to do. I try to typically do podcasting on Sundays. I try to leave Sundays for just a day of rest, as the God of my understanding uh, did it, and it's a day to focus on me and my family and all that kind of stuff and my faith. And so Sundays I usually leave for podcasting and doing the show. But anyway, I was thinking about the other day. I was thinking about, man, I need something inspiring to talk about. And you're going through life and everything and all that, and then all of a sudden something pops in your head. And I said, well, I thought we hadn't really talked much about celebrating successes, and there's many little things that we can be celebrated whenever we're at work, whether we're first responders or working everyday type industries. There's certain things that we can really appreciate and try to bring people up. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to say that I don't pretend to know anything much about what's going on overseas in the Middle East or in East Western Europe. um, but I do know that it's not a good situation. And so I would just encourage humanity to try to bring people up, try to help people out. I don't know that this is truly that complicated. um, I know that things have been really really rocky since the pandemic and a lot of the other stuff, but I would encourage our viewers and our listeners to just try to help people out and bring people up. I mean, that's I know there's sometimes we think we can't do stuff to help people, or we have no effect on things like that, like geopolitical type stuff. But at the end of the day, if we can help out in our own community to help people out, that's it's going to make a difference, and hopefully it'll spread sooner rather than later. Anyway, so getting back to celebrating successes, we I don't know if you can reflect back and think about a time, maybe when you were a kid, maybe when you're a young man or woman, and you probably knew somebody growing up, maybe a brother or sister or a friend from school that was able to just do uh, anything. Everything came naturally. Like, I have a friend who's actually a competitor in the fire truck world, and we had gone to the fire academy together. And man, I had to study. I had to read a lot and study. Although I knew the material because I had been doing it for a while, actually reading and being able to pass exams, it took a lot of effort for me. And this guy could just like sit in a lecture, and then he would get 80s and 90s on these exams. And I know there's people out there that many things come naturally. So maybe you've known somebody throughout your life that uh, a young girl that, man, there's just not a sport she can't play, or a young man who, like I said, gets awesome grades, and there's just nothing you're never surprised when you hear about all the good stuff and all the natural abilities they have. Well, for some of us, we have to work extra hard to get to that level. And it can be a challenge and tough. And so here's what I want to say is that imagine that one person that you knew growing up, that there wasn't nothing they couldn't do on the basketball court, or there wasn't nothing she couldn't do in the swimming pool for the swim team or whatever band. Imagine working with 182 people like that, you know? Imagine that. Imagine you go to let's say you're a welder and you go to your shop, and there's just everybody there is so they're given talents, and their abilities are just they make everything better. And I know it's not always like that with everybody's department or organization, but when the stuff hits the fan, you really just in our world, you just see some incredible stuff. And let me share a quick example with you. The other night, Diane and I were coming home from a box store, and we passed by a hotel motel in our town. And I pointed it to her, and I said, that place burned a couple of years ago, several years ago. And I said, that's the one where the crew ended up bringing the lady out. And she's like, oh yeah, she was naked, right? And I'm like, yeah, not only was she naked, but she didn't have legs, if I recall correctly. And so it just popped in my head, like, man, I need to talk about this and share this story. And I know I've mentioned on the channel before that we don't get a lot of opportunities to save lives. And I'd like to clarify and reverse that. And it's not that we don't get a lot of opportunities to save lives in our industry. It's that we don't get an opportunity to save lives in high risk, uh, low frequency events. And that's probably a good thing. But I think sometimes we don't reflect and realize how much of an impact we have on people, whether it's people in the community, our neighbors, uh, you know, whatever, school. Um, and so there is, in the fire service, there is an opportunity to save lives every day. We have no idea what we say at work, or maybe we help somebody and the day passes by and we don't think anything of it. I don't know if anybody's experienced this where somebody comes up to you 3 or 4 months later and says, "Hey, I took that advice you gave me, and it really worked out for the better." And that's when I started noticing that we definitely have an impact on people. Um, and of course, it's common knowledge, but sometimes it's not that common, you know. And it goes back to what I was talking about with bringing people up and helping other people be successful. Um, so we're passing by this hotel, and I started reflecting back on the drive home that particular day, we had been gearing up. So for many years, our fire dispatch was done at another organization, and we had been gearing up because we were bringing fire dispatch back to our city and our fire department. So our fire department was going to have its own communication center for emergencies. And this day we were launching it, and we were launching it at 6 in the morning. And so there had been a lot of, I mean, the dispatchers had been training for months, and I wasn't a part of this. Let me make that clear. I was a captain on shift, similar to like a battalion chief or district chief, depending on how your cities run their organizations. But each captain is responsible for the north side or south side of the town, and I happen to be the sector captain for the south side of town. So I wasn't involved in the structuring or the mechanics of creating this new dispatch. However, we were all really excited about bringing it back, so we would have a little bit more control over it. And that day we were launching, and we were launching at 6 in the morning. And so we're getting off that morning at 0800, but I don't know, 6:05, 6:10, whatever. The first call we get under the new dispatch, uh, it ends up being a working structure fire. Murphy's law. Um, and let me just say that it was top notch. All the policies and procedures were followed, and it was really fantastic. So I'm responding to the call, and the engine gets there for that district. It gets there first, and the company officer announces that he's got a working hotel fire. And so this is like a garden apartment type motel hotel. It's in an L shape. It's got a pool in the center of it, and then but there's a breezeway down where the L it kind of meets like this. So there's a breezeway down at the end to where there's rooms beyond the walkway, the hallway. Um, so sure enough, first floor, right there at that apex, uh, there's a unit that's blowing and going, and the LT reports that, hey, I got a working fire. And I'm pulling up at the same time because I think I was already out making my rounds for the morning paperwork and stuff. We usually pick up paperwork for the shifts the next morning before we get off duty. Um, and I got there, and I was just about to ask for a second alarm, and he did it. The lieutenant made that call. And, the funny thing is that you're watching this and you see this fire on the first floor. So I'm thinking, all right, we got to get the whole place evacuated. We gotta get up upstairs. It was a 2-story hotel motel, and we got to get it evacuated. And when you're there in the moment, you don't necessarily think about all this stuff. But when Diana and I were driving home the other night, I really got to think about, like I said, watching 20 to 30 firefighters come together and just, you know, take care of business. We have our own little intricacies inside the station. We have, some guys, some firefighters get along with others, some don't. There's little things like that. But when you really see it come together and you see a call come together like orchestrated in the right way, it's really a sight to see. Even as an incident commander. So I'm there, and uh, the beautiful thing about this is that I'm thinking, all right, somebody's got to get the hydrant. So the next engine, all this stuff that I'm talking about right now, like for instance, the lieutenant was able to arrive on scene, identify we had a working structure fire, stretch line with his firefighter, call a second alarm. So this is all in progress. They're toning out for a second alarm. Other units are going to start responding. And the beautiful thing about this is that if you're a civilian and you're watching this unfold, you don't get that a lot of this stuff is already established by policies and procedures. So we make sure that every rank is able to work at the next higher rank. So there's things that I, as an incident commander, don't have to worry about. I typically don't have to tell somebody to grab a hydrant. They already know that they need to grab it if they're the second in, second due. The driver operators, we make sure they're prepared and ready to drive and pump a truck before they're ever sitting in that driver's seat. So the cool thing is that a lot of this stuff was already established by leadership from 20 years prior, 30 years prior. I mean, these are SOPs, SOGs that we're following that sets the tone for the call. And sure, if one person makes an error, it can kind of jam up the call. But it really started that morning with dispatch when they toned it out for a working apartment fire, and I think all of us were probably thinking at the same time. And remember, we're all coming from different parts of the city. We're all thinking, really, like our first call is an actual working fire, and then it ends up being a second alarm. You can't make this stuff up. So I arrive on scene. I jump out of the suburban and I pull the board out the back and start making notes and looking at everything. And all of a sudden, I hear over the radio that that same company officer, he's got a victim. He can hear a victim beyond the fire. So remember, that fire is right there at that apex where the two buildings meet, right beyond the pool. So they got a stretch line from the truck from the parking lot around a pool, go down here, and this all happened quickly. There's a Starbucks right near the location, and he calls it. He's got a victim, and he's gonna perform a rescue. And so I'm watching, and I don't see the lieutenant. I see flames. I see a firefighter attacking those flames, and then I see the lieutenant come out from the smoke with a victim, and it's obvious the victim's alive. It's obvious this is a good save, and he's walking out. He's carrying her because, like I said, she doesn't have any legs. She was a double amputee, if I recall, and um, it's funny because I turn around and uh, over my left shoulder, I see him handing off the victim to the driver of the truck company, and the truck company comes from a faraway station, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, the more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm like, man, how did truck 6 get there so quick? Like, how are they? Well, they were there so quick because they're top notch. And looking back, so you think about a rescue company or a truck company, a ladder truck. They're not always needed on every call, but it's kind of funny how when you turn around and you need them the most, there they are. So you got to consider we have one engine on scene that's doing the fire attack and the rescue. We got the second engine that's setting up a supply line already. But I don't know how the truck company got there third. I have no idea. But anyway, you see the lieutenant from the first engine company handing off the victim to the driver of the truck company, and I look over at this lady who's standing in the Starbucks parking lot, and she's there like this, like she's in shock. She's in shock. Like, this is stuff you see on television. This is not something that happens. Like, and I remembered for a split second when I'm staring at this lady, like, I was thinking the same thing. Like, even though we work with these people every day, and even though I'm not surprised, like, it was just a beautiful thing to watch unfold, and it was seamless. It was seamless, and I know it doesn't always happen this way, but, um, just seeing the lieutenant pass off the victim, the driver of the truck company takes her to the ambulance, and then that same lieutenant go back and hook up with his firefighter and start putting the fire out. It was just, it was incredible to watch, and, I don't I'm not saying we didn't celebrate those successes. The crews were recognized and all that, but I don't think we take the time a lot of times to look back and realize how that happened. Those policies and procedures that I talked about that were established by chiefs in the 80s, 90s, they get tweaked from time to time, of course, but it really sets the stage for future growth and future successes. And if you don't have that stuff, this stuff can really end up being a bad situation. But when you really look at the mechanics of how a fire scene comes together, it's kind of like trying to think here. It's no different than any other industry. You have policies and procedures, but watching it unfold in an emergency situation it's just impressive. And so I hope that those communities that don't run as many calls like that really take the opportunity to train and prepare for that one day when you do get a high risk, low frequency alarm. We go to so many alarms that are not high risk, low frequency. We go to more low risk, high frequency calls we go to, and those can bite you too. Of course, those of you that are in the emergency services know that those are the ones you really can't let your guard down. You go to a fire alarm sounding to the same place every night for 30 nights, you know, um, or every month you go to the same place a couple times a month, and you let your guard down, and then the one time you go and it's actually on fire. Those can get you. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and realize that um, putting all the stuff aside with life, and I've talked about it before. When you're on a scene like that, even it doesn't even have to be a scene like that, but when you're there, like, I don't know how it is for everybody else, but I seem to be at such peace um, when you're putting somebody else ahead of your own. I mean, yeah, we get a check for it and all that stuff, but when you really see this stuff happen and you're a part of it, there's just a certain fulfillment that you get when you come home. Oh, at the end of the day. And I explained we graduated a couple fire inspectors a few weeks ago at my training facility. And I was explaining to, because in my new role, I'm more dealing with fire apparatus, station maintenance, PPE maintenance, all that kind of stuff, logistics of the department, everything from toilet paper to fire trucks, right? And I was explaining to this young firefighter who's been in the department, I think, almost 3 years. I explained that the same fulfillment you get when you help somebody out on an emergency situation, the same fulfillment you can get from every division in the fire department. Um, and he's like, I don't understand. I'm like, well, when a station calls me and says, hey, man, is there any way you could get us some window tint for our station because the heat's been brutal down here and the AC's working, but we think some tint would help. And you're able to not only take that, not only accomplish that, right? It's not a big deal to call a tint company, but you may have to sell that to your boss, like, hey, chief, this is why they need it, and I'm in favor of it, and this is my recommendation. And so you go home knowing that you're helping your internal customer out, which is your fellow firefighters. And I'm pretty sure that's how it is in the police and emergency services as well. Um, I've been posting a lot of stuff about culture, and um, we got to remember why we do this. If you're like me and you did it for free for many years, we got to remember that we did it for free, and we didn't complain. And I'm the biggest one. I love to complain. I do. But I take these opportunities and this kind of stuff here, this media stuff, to bring me back down to earth and realize that, people are counting on us, And the main thing too is that they're not only counting us to show up to their home for emergency situations or their business, but our families are counting on us to make right decisions at work too. And in the Courage to Be Safe program, the 16 life safety initiatives established by the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, they talk about how you don't have to be an officer to be a leader. Now, by all means, your leaders are there to provide direction and give you orders, but that doesn't mean you can't have the courage to say something when something needs to be said, or do the right thing when people aren't looking, or all that kind of stuff. Um, there was many moving up the ranks. There was many questions throughout the different books we read for promotion that as leaders we want to try to catch our people doing something right. It's really easy to catch somebody doing something wrong and chastise them. And uh, I try to practice daily because I've mentioned before that we don't get to pick our supervisors, and we don't always necessarily get along. But at the end of the day, we salute, we go with the flow. Um, but we need to understand where they're coming from too. Maybe they have other stuff going on. Um, maybe you're in the fire suppression division and you can't understand why you can't get something fixed at your station. Well, maybe it's because the fire prevention division has something at their office that needs attention before you do. You know, and so I would encourage everybody to, when you're looking to promote up and you're looking to be uh, in those type of positions, encourage your people, and understand that although you may be promoting into something you don't want to do necessarily, don't knock it until you try it, because I'm telling you, there's fulfillment in every different aspect of the fire service. Whether you're ordering toilet paper and fire trucks or you're knocking down a two-bedroom house fire, there's the same. I've experienced the same joy and fulfillment that comes from serving, and it's crucial. So with that, I hope to be visiting with everybody soon. I hope everybody is enjoying our content. You can find us again on Justifiably Proud Productions at Buzzsprout.com. We're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, some of the other outlets, Apple iPod, Apple Podcasts, and then the YouTube channel. I've really been promoting quite a bit, which you just search under Justifiably Proud Productions. I would appreciate a subscribe and a like to help us grow the channel. And we'll see everybody in the future. Be safe out there. Uh, and yeah, let's try to make a better impact with all the geopolitical stuff going on, and try to be helpful to others. With that being said, take care. Have a great day. We'll see you next time on Justifiably Proud Productions.